Hello and welcome to the Shawl tutorial. This tutorial has a segment for each of the three sections. So there's three segments in the tutorial and you can skip ahead. It's chapterized. You can skip to the segment that you're working on. First, here's a little overview of the pattern. So the segment one begins with casting on up here a few stitches and working, increasing along the edges and center to the point where section 2 begins. The edge stitches and colour changes are a little bit tricky and I created a video just to guide you along with that section. Then section 2 is the mosaic section, continuing to increase along the edges. However, for this section, the I-cord edging is worked with a very simple intarsia. So a separate amount of the colour 1 will be carried down the edge here while that's worked. So the tutorial gives an overview of the mosaic, a little demonstration, and explains the intarsia edging. And then the final section is the garter band and then the looped edging. And that is explained in the third section of this tutorial. This is the DK weight version of the shawl. And here are the two fingering weight options. The pattern is worked exactly the same for both option. The difference is the yarn weight that you'll use and the corresponding needle size. With the fingering weight option, there is an additional option to use mini skeins for the main colour, for the colour 1. In this case, I've used a solid colour 1. You could also use a single skein gradient, which is very effective. I did choose to use a gradient for colour 2. It's quite subtle, but there is, you can see, shift in colour there, yellow through pink through blue. And you can have fun with the slip stitch sections as well and use any colours you like. We saw some fantastic variations of this project in the Mystery Niche Long that this was designed for. Something to keep in mind when choosing colours is that ideally have a strong contrasting colour 2. So that's the black colour here, or in this version, the pinky colour. And so when I was planning this gradient set, I decided to work the darker colour down, knowing that I'd be having the lighter colour, which would more strongly contrast with that colour too. I started off with the darkest colour and worked my way down, and it could be the opposite. If I had a really light colour for colour 2, I could have had that brighter pink down here. So that's just a couple of tips to get you started. Dive back into the tutorial along the way as you progress through the pattern. Happy knitting! Section 1, or clue 1. This clue is reasonably straightforward. I'll give you some pointers for working the edge stitches and just a couple of little tips to help you along your way. I'm knitting the fingering weight version with a set of mini skeins as well for a different option. And it's a set of 5 mini skeins for the equivalent of the 100 grams. And the contrast mini skein. I finished clue 1 or part 1 using 2 of the minis, and then I'm working on a third as well, which I'll carry on into the next clue. And then I have these 2 final colours left. I've got in the instructions where you'll need to make the colour changes to make the most out of your minis, and you will probably end up with a bit of each mini left as well. Part of the way through section 1 or clue 1, I've worked the setup here and 2 repeats. Now I'm up to row 7. I thought I'd stop here and show how I'm managing the yarn overs at the ends. And this will be the same for the setup row, so if you're just starting to watch this before getting started, you'll get the tips that you need. So to begin, row 7, which is the same as 3 and 5 and 13 and 15, and I'll knit all the way across to the other end and show how I manage turning the work and the yarn over edges. And I'm at the end of that right side row. So I will knit into the back of the yarn over from the previous row, work a yarn over and and slip 2 stitches, turn the work, and be sure to keep that yarn over with the yarn on to the back of the work. Now I use it to purl these first 2 stitches. And there's the yarn over I just worked. I'm going to knit into the back of that, and first we'll work a yarn over, but I'm actually going to just do those both at the same time. So I will insert my needle into the back of that stitch and then just bring the yarn over, which creates that yarn over, and work that stitch. So you can see the yarn over the worked stitch, and I'll continue to knit across the wrong side of this row and come back to you at the end of that wrong side row to show you how I turn my work for this part. I'm at the end of that wrong side row. I'll work into the back of that yarn over and then work the yarn over for the end of the row. And then I'm actually going to bring that yarn to the back of the work before I slip the stitches and turn the work. So that stays there at the back of the work, ready for the next row. And the next row is a slip stitch row, same as these. And there's a couple of things I want to show you on this row as well. It begins with knit 2 with the main colour, and then that's left aside for the row, while the contrast colour is used. And you can see a really nice strong contrast is the most effective for this. So I just bring that, kind of hold it under the yarn I've just worked and loop for the yarn over. This yarn over stitch is going to be slipped, and it won't be knit into until we come back with this yarn on the following row, right side row. And then it's a process of knitting and slipping stitches for this row up to the marker, and I'll show you what happens when we get there. Worked my way to the marker. There's one stitch before the marker. I will slip that, work a yarn over for that central increase, slip the marker, slip the center stitch, and then bring that yarn over, yarn back around and another yarn over for the start of the next half, and continue slipping and knitting all the way to the end. And I'll stop there and show you how I turn that work. Okay, I've reached the end of that right side row. Have that yarn over to slip, work a yarn over, slip the next 2 stitches and turn the work. Now just for this row, these stitches are slipped again so that they stay that green colour, maintain the main colour. And then the edge increase this time will be a knit into the back and front of that yarn over stitch. So bring the yarn to the front of the work, it'll be a knit stitch. Put the needle through the back of the stitch, make a stitch, leave that on that needle and work through the front of the stitch. And that's knit front back into that stitch. And now I'm going to slip the stitches that were slipped on the previous row, so all the green stitches will be slipped. The floats will be on the wrong side of the work. So slip and then bring the yarn through to knit and continue this way across all of the stitches. Again, once we get to the center stitch yarn overs, they'll be worked into the back of that loop. Okay, at the central stitches, bring that yarn back through, work through the back of the yarn over loop, slip that central stitch and through the back of the loop of that yarn over, and I'll show you what I do at this end. Okay, so I get to the end of the work, there's a slip stitch, a knit, the end of the the row, slip that yarn over stitch, and then as I did at the start of the row, I'm going to bring that yarn forward and into the back of that stitch, and I'll just secure the tail there with my thumb while I do this. And then the front of the stitch, bring the yarn back and slip two. And then I'll break that yarn and continue on with the main colour. Or section 2, a mosaic section with sweet flowers. And you can see that the shaping has changed from a centre stitch either side of to a panel being formed here. Just slightly changing the shape of the shawl. And the I-cord edging being carried along in the colour one, the main colour, with that second ball of yarn there. Okay, so I've started the first mosaic row or clue 2 row. It begins with knitting the 2 I-cord stitches in the green, and then for the main part I'm only working colour 2 across. I like to use stitch markers to mark the repeat, so I'm placing a stitch marker after every 16 stitch repeat to help me stay on track. And I'm 1 repeat before the centre stitch here. This repeat starts with 3 slipped stitches. So slip those 3. There is a bit of a float. This is about the longest float in this project. So just keep the stitches spread apart to ensure that float is nice and loose. And then it will be knit 5, slip 1, knit 5, slip 2, and I'll mark that repeat here, and another slip. And here we have the centre stitch. And now we're going to be increasing within the centre stitch markers. And so it will start growing in the centre out rather than along this edge, which it has been so far. So it will change the shape slightly. So I will yarn over within that marker, knit 1 as instructed, and yarn over again. And I'm just going to change that to a marker that's the same, so my centre markers are the same. And then continue working across, which will be a mirror of this side. I've worked my way down to the end of that first right side row. Place that last marker. The markers are optional, it's just something I like to do to keep track. Slip those 3 stitches after the last repeat, then knit 1 and make 1. And this is where we're going to introduce the second ball of yarn. I'm just using my giant ball, but if you just wind off a small amount for this section. And it'll be a little bit fiddly the first time. We're going to slip those 2 stitches, turn the work, and join in this yarn, which will be a bit loose for the first couple of rows, but will become more integrated once you've knit a few rows down. So we'll purl those 2, then going to lay that over the yarn I'm about to use and bring that up so that they hold together. And then I'm going to knit and work a yarn over at the same time as earlier in the project. Just keep everything snug. And for the way back on the wrong side row, I'm just going to knit the stitches I knit on the previous side and then slip the stitches slipped on the previous side. So slipping 5, knit 5, bring the yarn to the back of the work, slip 1, always want those floats on this side of the work so that it's neat on the right side, bring the yarn forward to knit, and continue on like that. The pattern has written instructions for the Mosaic and also charts, and there's 2 charts offered. Because I have a dark colour one, I'm using the dark colour one chart just to make it a bit easier to see what's happening there. And if you're using a light colour one, you would probably use the light colour one chart. And finishing up clue 2, I've used the colours, 5 fade colours, which are colour 1A, B, C, D, E. I used the first 3 in clue 1 and then continued with some of 3 for clue 2 here, and change colours for the rest of clue 2, and then I'll continue on and use the last 2 colours for clue 3. And I've finished with colour 2, so that's the black colour. In this case, I won't be using that in clue 3. On the home stretch of your sole shawl now, the final part is the looped edging, which starts with garter rows, then there'll be a setup row with double yarn overs. Following that, a row where stitches are increased into the yarn overs, and that's what I'll be showing in this tutorial. 2 other things that I mentioned in the pattern is how you can make the shawl larger. I had a few people ask at the start of the knit along if that would be possible, and it is. You can work more of these garter rows to make the shawl deeper and wider before working the final edging. In the pattern I suggest you work a multiple of 4 additional rows, and that's to bring the stitch count to a multiple of 4, so that would be plus 12 stitches, which will fit in nicely with the border. If you really wanted to, you could just do 2 rows, so making 1 garter ridge. And if you did that, I would suggest that the second row, the wrong side row, you leave out the wrong side increases, and then that would mean that you'd only increase 4 stitches total for those 2 rows. So that's an option. I haven't worked out exactly the additional yardage that would be required for adding these rows. I suggest that you weigh your yarn before and after perhaps 2 rows, 1 garter ridge, to get a sense of how much you are using. It's quite a bit at this point per row. And make sure that you have enough on top of what the pattern recommendation is to add those additional rows in. And something else I mentioned is the 5 mini skein for colour 1 fingering weight option. For the 5th colour, the 5th mini, which is separate to this, the colour 2, I used 74 yards or 68 metres of what was recommended 80 yard 74 metre minis. Normally I like to pad out by 10%, so normally my comfort zone would have been about 72 yards, which makes it a bit more than 5%, maybe 6% padding with the 80 yard mini skein. Some of you will find that your minis may be exactly that yardage, and others might have more yardage. They might be a slightly lighter yarn or just a bit of a heavier mini skein. Maybe it's got some bonus in there. Anyway, I wanted to point that out. It's about the same as what I used for the black or the colour 2 in this. So if you had enough for colour 2, you'll certainly have enough for colour 5, I would assume. I consider myself to be an in-between knitter, neither loose nor tight, so my gauge kind of sits in the middle there. If you're a loose knitter, perhaps a continental style knitter, you might find that you need to go down a couple of needle sizes, or one at least, to match the gauge and therefore the yardage used. Okay, on to a little tutorial for the looped edging. I'm here on row 10. I've just worked the first few stitches. I have worked a slip, slip, knit, knit two together. So now I wrap the yarn around twice for a double yarn over, and then I'll bring that back to the front when I'm working the next stitch, which is slip, slip, knit, knit two together, double yarn over, slip, slip, knit. Repeat many more times. Okay, for the next part of the looped edging, I've worked almost to the end of the right side row here, and just stopping to show you how to work into the double yarn over stitch from the previous row. The first part of the repeat is knit one, so you'll knit one into one of the decreased stitches from the previous row, and then into the double stitch you'll make a total of 5 stitches. So you'll knit one, leave the yarn over on the needle, bring the yarn forward, purl one, take it back, knit one. So it's knit one, purl one, knit one into the first yarn over, take that yarn over off the needle, and purl one, knit one, and that's it. Then knit one, and come to the next double yarn over and repeat that process. Knit one, purl one, knit one, take that off the needle, purl one, knit one, and repeat to the end.